Chapter 10. The Gospel of Inspired Action. Can we reduce such uncommon thoughts as these to the common needs of the hour? You will ask. We cannot desert the world, cannot leave our Londons and go forth to contemplation amid solitude. We have our debts to pay to Ammetus, and our feet are chained for life while paying them. You will complain. The world is harsh and hard and has no use for such vain and hollow doctrines as yours. We cannot subsist upon a diet of clouds. Yours is an excellent philosophy for those who sit in ease at the chimney corner, perhaps, but how can it help us, who toil and moil amid a matter-of-fact society? You will conclude. To these questions contain some frequent misconceptions of what constitutes true spirituality, and I will begin to answer them by posing another question in return. Have you ever been caught up in one of those tropical whirlwinds which move with awe-inspiring force? Strangely enough, you find that in the very center of that whirlwind there is a place perfectly calm and untouched. So too, the man who knows himself attains mental equilibrium and remains unmoved amid the feverish activity of the world. His inmost being is in peaceful, undisturbed repose, whatever whirlwind of life swirls around him, whatever work he is doing, and whatever thoughts engage his intellect. Spiritual truth is apt to be considered the prerogative of speculative men, lost in pious or philosophical dreams. That it should be brought within the purview of active men of affairs is a consideration which seems dubious, but history has not infrequently turned it to fact. Is it possible to fuse the wisdom of this world with the wisdom of things divine? Why not? Why, for instance, should not the spiritual seeker be conjoined with the man of business? I know one man who owns a chemical factory in an English provincial town who has attempted this. His entire organization, his laboratory equipment, his office equipment, his advertising methods, and his manufactured products are easily among the best or most up-to-date in their line. He treats his many workers on the basis of the golden rule. There is nothing within reason that he will not do for them, with the result that there is nothing reasonable that they will not do for him. Every night before retiring to rest after the dust and effort of the day, for that is the only time he can spare, he goes off to a quiet corner of his house and devotes a tranquil half-hour to mental quiet, finding therefrom a sublime peace and supporting power which inspire his next day's activities, and which enable him to keep a secret liberty of the spirit amid all the mechanization of today. He has made this regular practice quite compatible with active life. It provides him with an inner poise amid the distractions and turmoil of present-day existence. The higher wisdom and strength that he finds in the divine center are later brought into effective action in his business. The businessman who objects that he has no time and no thought for spiritual interests because his material affairs absorb them all is in a sorry plight. What then is the true business of man? Is it right to consider our material needs of the moment, but it is not right to consider them without reference to anything else? Many are the Westerners who have buried themselves in their business and scarcely ever come out to notice that there is a spiritual sun above. 1,000 thoughts throng their heads from dawn to dusk. The night falls and they are left to reap the harvest of what has been sown. Amid all this teeming field of thought and life, what remains? Even when danger threatens and the physician packs them off on a long holiday, such is their slavery that, though they cannot take the business with them, they are compelled to carry it out in their minds. It is now the driver, and they but the burdened steeds. It is a sad but necessary day in a man's life when he finds that, for all his striving, his hands hold little more than withered leaves. At such a moment, he may begin to perceive that true spirituality is neither an abstract science nor an abstruse speculation. It is a way of life, a deeper outlook upon the world. It may be painful to arrive at such a day, but it is the prelude to a worthwhile happiness. The practical affairs of human life no longer exist to serve them, but to tyrannize over them. Things are in the saddle and ride mankind, says Emerson somewhere, and it is true enough of such men. The consciousness that could be set free for a short while each day to acquire the jewel of inward spiritual peace is compelled by the machine they have constructed around themselves to grind itself out in the petty and the puerile. Man, eager to improve his machines, forgets to improve himself. To divorce life from the spiritual is to put it in danger. The active self must be fed by the spiritual resources of the deeper self. We must balance up by posing activity with our contemplation. The critical intellect must meet the visionary intuition as a friend, not as a foe. The commercial capacities must collaborate with the spiritual imaginations, while our deep selfishness needs to come to grips with our deeper altruism. In this way, each of us can become the exponent of a deep viewpoint in our shallower life. Our lives must find the golden mean. We must dwell a while in mental quiet each day, without losing the capacity for practical work. We must put a proper balance upon the mystical and material elements of our nature, diverse and incompatible as they apparently are. Whoever will follow the secret path which has been outlined here will find this balance without strain, for it will come to him naturally of his own accord. The monk who makes his meditation an obsession is free to do so, but we who have to live and work in the world must seek a wise balance. The light found during our practice of mental quiet will then shine through our actions when we go out to mingle freely with the crowd. Inspired action can be made as much a practical exercise for attaining spirituality as renunciation of worldly life and retreat into monastic places. All the spiritual men do not wear monkish robes. Some wear tweed trousers. Times change, and men change with them. The sequestered life which satisfied the life-weary Eastern hermit of the past will hardly satisfy the aspiring Western man of today. He cannot fail to feel somewhat of the spirit of material enterprise which surrounds him. If he is wide awake, he will know its value and consider how it may be conjoined to the higher aim which he has found. He need not lose sight of the practical affairs of his life while he is engaged upon the mystical affairs of truth. A common idea of one who follows a spiritual path is that he is a pious and peaceful enough sort of man, but devoid of any sort of utility in the scheme of things, and defunct in the faculties of reason and common sense. That he could link thought with thought in iron strictness, or go out and make a place for himself among the executive of a mammoth modern business, or command an entire battalion during war, is a notion which provokes satire, although I have known men of this kind who have done these things. He is looked upon as a somewhat feeble and foolish creature, even if a good-natured one. Because you are a devotee of God, does that mean you should be a fool? Do you think a shopkeeper opens a shop to practice religion? Why did you not examine the pan before you purchased it? Exclaimed Sri Ramakrishna, one of 19th century India's most famous saints, to a young disciple who went out to buy an iron pot and, on returning, found it leaky. The man who takes to the higher life is not necessarily emasculated of all human talent. Even if he becomes as humble and as loving as Saint Francis of Assisi, He can still be as brainy as Bernard Shaw, as full of courage as William Tell, and as gifted as Galileo. It is false to believe that because he draws his wisdom by direct awareness from a deeper source, he need lose the ability to think logically, to manage both men and affairs, and to take his place in the active world. These qualities may still exist within him, but can no more enslave him. To inspire one's daily life with strength drawn from faith in the divinity within is surely to become a better worker, and not a worse. For then one has infinite power to draw upon, as well as greater wisdom to act rightly. Sir J. A. Thompson, in a recent presidential address to the British Association, mentioned that the solution of some of his intricate scientific problems came to him when he emptied his mind of the problems and let it remain quiet and still for a time. Few know that the late Lord Leverhulme, who built up the largest industrial organization of its kind in the world, could relax anywhere at will and put himself into a serene state of reverie. In the midst of the most gigantic tasks, he frequently availed himself of this power. Those who believe that meditation rightly conducted in the way prescribed is only a form of sentimental idealism or abstract thinking makes a great mistake. Such meditation gradually liberates a soul force in man of which he was not previously aware, and which eventually becomes the greatest inspirer of his activities. It is the most powerful precisely because it is the most inward element of his being. This is a truth, and men like Oliver Cromwell, Abraham Lincoln, and the Emperor Marcus Aurelius in the West, or like Prince Shivaji, the Emperor Akbar, or King Asoka in the East, believed it, acted upon it, and triumphed. Man moves from morning till night across a background of activities and interests which are purely material in nature. In this, of course, he is acting quite naturally. The world confronts him ceaselessly, and he must make what he can of it. But what he does not know is that by detaching himself for a short space of time each day, and by letting all his interests in these activities temporarily die out, during that time he may obtain high protection and right guidance for all those activities. The world gives itself up to incessant activity merely because it knows of nothing better. The inspired man works among its whirring wheels also, but he knows whither the wheels are going. For he has found the center, where all is stillness, where all is power, where all is wisdom, and for him the circumference of activity merely follows the center by natural law. Our practical activity surrounds us with a close net. We need to free ourselves and yet not destroy the use of this useful net at the same time. It is neither necessary nor sensible for the student to live with his head in the clouds. He is living on this mundane sphere, and he best can express the principles he has learnt by applying them to his mundane existence. He needs to look up to the skies and gain a clear vision of spiritual insight, but after that he needs to look down on this earth again and apply that insight to the manner in which he handles his worldly affairs. He must endeavor to maintain an equilibrium between spiritual and material forces. He needs to achieve a balanced life, a life of the spirit sought and found daily, and feeding the life of personal activity, and infusing its wisdom and power into his excursions into worldly affairs. If he has regularly practiced the meditations prescribed in the earlier pages, if he has constantly tried to gather his thoughts around the quest for the divine self, he will gradually become aware of the spiritual nature within himself, which he has hitherto been covered over. I say gradually because wisdom does not arrive to a man on some precise day. It dawns. This awareness is like the lighting of an electric lamp. A current of spirituality will be switched on with every such return to mental quiet or to self-observation. Let him attend to his duties and take his pleasures just as he did before. There need be no change in them other than what his gradual inner enlightenment will suggest. But when all such changes will be voluntary, not forced upon him by an artificial system or external discipline. Once he has established the habit of morning meditation and becomes a perfectly natural thing to carry on all the day's activities within the spiritual current so started, he will discover that his work will increasingly be carried out within this current of spirituality, which will last longer and longer into the day as he proceeds upon the secret path. Ultimately, all his work, all his social relaxation will go on inside this current. His whole attitude will be changed by the presence of the current, but his work need not be neglected. And ultimately, a time will come when he can drop his meditation, because his whole life will be one long meditation, and yet he will be as active as ever. Life will be enriched and not lessened if we draw upon this ancient wisdom. It supplements and complements. It need not destroy. We live chiefly for economic ends, but these can only be rightly achieved when we have permitted some spiritual impulses to filter down into them. The spirit must enter into every department of a man's life. If he leaves it out of his business activities, if he forgets it when he begins to think of sex, or if he cannot express it when dealing with other people, he shuts himself out of its magical power to give him the truest success, the greatest happiness, and the most harmonious existence. Once we end this impossible division of interests and unify our scattered desires by a sublime sacrificial act of submission to the higher will, we may find peace. Once we bring ourselves to the final point of surrender to the promptings of the Overself, we begin to walk the path of our true destiny, our true life. We shall lose nothing by obeying such promptings. There is room in life for the warmth of love as well as for the coldness of ascetic self-denial, for the hubbub of crowds as well as for the quiet of meditation. No modern way of higher living must be too spiritual to perform a few variations on such themes as worldly business and daily work, nor too refined to touch the piano keys of human love and human passion. In the result, a time will arrive when the spiritual man will come to look upon everything, every object, event, and person as a manifestation of the divine, when he will discover that he can have no higher commission than this, to express his Overself in whatever he does and with whoever he contacts. Let us accept and use wisely all the facts which modern science has found out. Let us live in enjoyment of all the comforts and conveniences its progress can bestow. Let us renounce nothing but the unwise and destructive use we have often put it to, the unbalanced attention we have given it. But let us also link this external social activity with a deeper life, the life of tranquil thought and inner peace, and thus learn to preserve an unruffled stillness of spirit even amid varied vicissitudes of existence. Whoever has to live and work amid the busy and feverish life of today, for him, too, there is thus a way which leads straight to the calmness of the Supreme. Let him introduce into this distracting activity a spiritualizing principle. Let him not renounce his work and flee from the haunts of men, but let him renounce his former attitude to work. That which was previously done for selfish benefit alone is henceforth to be done also in the spirit of serving humanity. This is practical spirituality. Withal, he will find half an hour each day wherein to collect high and holy ideas and place them upon the altar of his mind, a silent offering to the first cause. This is the only gospel which the practical West can use, this gospel of inspired action, if it is to attain a higher civilization. If there is any message the whole world is waiting for, it is an East-West message, a gospel of inspired action. Then we shall attack the world's problems of poverty, war, disease, and ignorance with a new zest and with better success. Yet we shall not forget to render our daily homage to that peace-bestowing and soul-ennobling divinity who dwells in the hearts of men.